Hi everyone, thank you for being here. We're going to try and go through this fairly quickly because we want to have some time for talking and Q&A and being interactive. So, Grayson is actually going to lead this part. We thought we would have 2 microphones, but we only have 1, so we had all these cute, like, handoff situations. Now it's just going to be a little bit awkward, so bear with us. Handoff.
Cool. So, quick experiment here. If you have been frustrated by a law or anything in society in the last year, raise your hand. And if you don't raise your, no, keep them up. If your hand isn't raised, we're going to have a serious talk after this. Yeah. So, in the last year, you've had something. Tell me, keep your hand raised, all way up in the sky. Let's pretend like it's a concert. If you've attended a political protest or donated to a progressive cause or a cause to justify what you're pissed off about in the last year.
Or done anything.
If you've done something, keep your hand up in the last year. Okay, how about in the last month? If you haven't, put your hand down. How about in the last week? How about in the last 24 hours? Okay. So, this is sort of the reason that we have done what we've done. We saw things in the world that made us mad, and we stepped in, we were tired of sitting there, and we said, let's go fight some power. Let's raise our voices. So Tina will start to tell you how we stumbled into that mission.
Yeah, so we're here to speak on the topic of broken, and I think we could spend the entire hour talking about what we see here in our state that's broken, what we see in our nation that's broken, but instead we want to focus on some ways that we can all work together to fix what we see that's broken. And what we've really realized in the last 3 years of sort of stumbling accidentally into community activism is that the way people approach getting involved in their community and making tangible differences is a little bit broken as well. A lot of times I hear people who say, I'm not an activist, or I don't read the news that often, or I don't feel like I can get involved. And we think that is, that's a broken system. We are all here because we are creative in some form or fashion, and we can use that creativity and the skills that we have to make incredible amounts of difference with, you'd be surprised how little effort it takes. So what we've learned is there's really no magic formula to making things happen, to making change. Just use the skills that you have, use what you know, and then come out to show people that things matter to you. So this all started with something called Moral Monday, which are all of you familiar with what Moral Monday is? It's an awesome event. Started happening, I think, in 2012. And I actually got a sort of serendipitous Facebook message today. You know how Facebook like feeds you memories every morning and like makes you want to share them? So you're like, oh, that happened. So 3 years ago today, actually, my friend Carol Dukes took a picture of me. I've got this big North Carolina flag around my neck. Grayson is wearing really funny, like oversized aviator sunglasses. I'm not sure what was up with that decision. But
we had just been in Jamaica.
We had just been to Jamaica. It was the day we got back from our honeymoon. So yeah, we had just returned to America, Jamaica, sunglasses, and I got arrested. So this day, 3 years ago, I went to jail with Moral Mondays, and it was a really, really transformative experience. It was incredible. It was the first time I had ever shown up and decided to speak out and actively put myself in whatever small fashion on the line for something that I believed in. And this is what Moral Mondays more or less looked like for every time we attended, which I think was maybe 10 or so times in a row. And when I went to jail, I met some really, really, really incredible women. I was in a cell with them for about 3 hours, and when you're in a jail cell, there's really nothing to do but talk. And we talked about why we were there and why it mattered to us. And I was the youngest person in that jail cell by about 30 years. And these women who had fought through civil rights, who had been participating in activism for decades, looked at me and said, where are the rest of your people? Y'all are young, like we're old, we're tired, we'd rather be home, we have kids, we have jobs, we have things to do, and we are out here. You young people are just sitting there tweeting about it, like where are you? So I vowed that the next time I had an opportunity to get involved and to speak out and to do something, the next time something made me angry, I wasn't just gonna sit around, I was gonna show up. So then we started, Grayson and I started something called Saturday Chores, which is a very literal explanation of what it is. As you can see on the left, that's us gardening. We had just bought a house, and buying a house requires a lot of trips to Home Depot. So many trips to Home Depot. So we were doing chores on a Saturday morning, and the drive from downtown Raleigh to Crossroads and Cary passes by a women's health clinic. And we passed by these people holding these terrible, awful signs like babies are murdered here outside of the health clinic, and we decided to do something about it.
So the idea was to make signs. So we bought poster board, and we started coming out with slogans. And every Saturday morning, first just us, and then our friends, and then like 100 folks, more than that, every week would show up on Saturday morning, the same time. We would hold up these ridiculous signs, and we would take photos and we would share them. And the movement, or the sort of social media shares of this sort of went crazy. And we started to get international press for this thing that was just a total lark. It was going to the store.
That's a heat map.
This is a heat map of all the countries that this has been seen in the world, and it has been seen in every country in the world except 2 or 3, I think, was the last check.
Cuba, like, recently came on
Cuba
in the last
Cuba's
year, which
now
was
on
kind of
board.
cool.
So we just had this simple idea, we started doing it, and we started putting it on the internet. It was as simple as that. It was an hour out of every Saturday morning. The biggest challenge every week was to come up with something else that was sarcastic or funny or rhetorical or mean sometimes. And then we just shared them. And this is, so the idea started spreading in a way that someone at NC State, Melissa Adams, actually started studying it. And she has used this, and she's now writing, I think, a master's thesis or something about it.
PhD.
It's going to be a PhD maybe. And this is sort of the way it spread. It's these are all like little nodes of how this idea spread and sort of jumped around the internet. And it's a little amazing. And it started to jump, as you saw in that heat map, to different countries. And we started to see, coverage in newspapers that we can't actually read. And this is a guy named James Straker who lives in Australia. And he saw this on the internet somewhere. We did an early radio interview in Australia. He said, well, I really love this. And there's an abortion clinic down the street where they have the same signs. So I'm going to do this too. And we started seeing this more and more. The idea started jumping to other countries. It's happened in Canada, it's happened in San Francisco, it's happened in the States, and I know that San Francisco is in the country, not Donald Trump. So the idea started jumping. It started going from place to place, started showing up in newspapers. We still get sent links that it's happening right now in places across the world, around the world. One thing we noticed is that it had created a problem. Yeah, this is my favorite. This is like kind of my favorite sign ever, because she was so mean. So one thing we noticed is that doing this kind of created a different problem. It created a few problems, actually. One is that it created such a hubbub. So the idea was to simply serve as a barrier between women trying to use the clinic and the people who wanted to harass them. We wanted to be like a human, eventually to create a distraction and then a human shield. But it also created so much hubbub and so much, there were so many people coming out that it almost felt like a distraction from what the clinic was there for. So we said, and the other thing is, I don't know if you've ever protested pro-life folks, sidewalk counselors they call themselves, but they're kind of a dangerous lot. Tina specifically started getting a lot of pretty nasty threats, both through her employer and just personally. It was a little scary, so we said, well, what's a way that we can use this momentum to back out? What's a system we can implement we've been funny, now let's turn that funniness into seriousness and step away so that you don't keep getting death threats, which is a real thing. So we started a Indiegogo campaign. I think the goal was $2,000, and I believe that we raised almost $6,000 in a day. So the goal was to build this fence, and that's us sitting in the fence. I was out of town the first Saturday the fence was there, but Tina drove there and sat across the street and watched the sidewalk counselors arrive, and were just flabbergasted and so stunned that this had happened. So that was the idea, and the sort of premise of it was accidental, but the premise, I think, has sort of become our mantra of sorts. Do something funny, do something creative, do something that engages people on a different level than a common protest, and then use that to do something serious. Use it to drive some sort of larger change.
Oops. Again, there's not a magic formula. Just use what you know. We use Tumblr, Instagram, and crowdfunding. Y'all in this room are probably familiar with all of those things, and it's now challenged local legal standards for opposing groups picketing at the same time. It's resulted in 175 feet of privacy fencing, and it brought national and international attention to this issue. So the next thing we did after that, we were dormant for about 6-8 months or so, and we got the itch again. HB2 happened, and that sucked, and we decided to do something about it. So if you're not familiar with the Air Horn Orchestra, we're going to play a video. I know I see some familiar faces here who have participated, but for those of you who don't know what it is, I'm going to go ahead and play like a minute clip of it.
3, 2, 1.
Well, if you didn't hear them before, Governor McCrory does now. An air horn protest.
Air Horn Orchestra. Air Horn Orchestra. Air Horn Orchestra. Some of the loudest protesters in the fight over House Bill 2 making themselves heard. And they're using air horns.
Finding new ways to protest House Bill 2.
More than 100 activists with air horns.
Air horns, big and small, this self-described air horn orchestra blasting their disapproval of House Bill 2 at Governor McCrory's front door.
It's a national embarrassment to be associated with this bill, and it's one part of a very regressive legislature that's been going on for years, so we just don't want to be quiet anymore.
People are really excited about trying to help the state.
The protesters say the lawmakers who passed the bill are taking away the rights of North Carolinians.
I find them just absolutely hypocritical, and they need to go home.
The strategy they had has backfired completely, and they don't know how to fix it.
And the activists say they will continue to hold the air horn rallies until House Bill 2 is repealed. Until House Bill 2 is repealed. So the midweek music may continue outside the mansion.
So, thank you. That is, thank you, that's very kind. That's the Air Horn Orchestra. We did it on a lark, much like Saturday Chores. We were just talking about wouldn't this be zany and weird if we just made a ruckus outside of the governor's mansion? Grayson posted a Facebook status about that. People responded positively. I made a Facebook group, and it went from there. And next week will be our 12th consecutive week. And there were like all kinds of people with all kinds of instruments who have now come out and adopted this as their own thing. This guy bought a marching bass drum, which is like amazing. Young people, old people, black people, white people, gay people, straight people, it doesn't matter. Trans people, all kinds of people. And with Saturday Chores, one thing we noticed, back to the broken theme, is engaging young people and engaging a diverse set of people to come out and rally around a common cause is something that is difficult. And with Saturday Chores, we were able to activate the millennials, I guess you could say, and encourage people to use social media and to get involved in ways that speak to them. And I think the Air Horn Orchestra has been just a further progression of that concept. This was cool. Pat McCrory was giving a talk at the History Museum, and a lot of people have joked us because we're out there every Wednesday no matter what, and whether Pat is there or not.
Blowing horns in front of the house here, and cussing and swearing. Blowing horns in front of the house here, and cussing and swearing.
I think we have this on loop. Anyway, Pat knows who we are, and that feels good. We also don't cuss and swear. I don't know where that came from.
Should we mention that we were outside? We should mention that we were outside.
We were outside when he was giving that speech, and you can actually hear on the news, he talks for about 8 minutes, and all of a sudden there's just this, and it goes on. I think we played for 25 minutes that time, so he gets a little shifty-eyed and uncomfortable, and it's awesome. So after 11 weeks, we have a media analysis company that has run numbers on the coverage of Air Horn Orchestra. And this is just broadcast. This doesn't involve anything that we've done on the internet. It's also spread pretty far on the internet, but broadcast viewership alone has reached 3.5 million people in the state of North Carolina. And if you were to do a buy, if you were a political organization that wanted to buy this anti-HB2 message on television, it would cost you somewhere close to $200,000. And we've achieved that for free with minimal work by engaging the community. Thank you. That's so nice. So yeah, I'm gonna go back to the same slide you've seen every time. We really want to drive this home. There's not a magic formula. We made a Facebook group and then we showed up. That's what we did. Got it?
One other thing to add real fast, this is sort of a perfect metaphor. We're talking about the way that, an unintentionally perfect metaphor, the way, one of the things we're talking about today is broken, and how models of protest are a little broken or a little dated. A lot of people don't participate in political protest because they're afraid they're preaching to the choir, right? Like, I'm just gonna go out there, I'm gonna be with friends who all have the same mindset as me, and what am I doing? I'm wasting my time, no one's listening, I'm not changing anyone's mind. One of the things that I think we've found and that we believe in doing these protests is preaching to the choir is totally fine. You can build your own choir. You can start a choir, you can be the loudest choir possible, and others will join your movement. And if you make one person reconsider the way they think or what they have held as values, or just that they haven't questioned something, that's good enough. And just raising your voice and being a choir is an amazing feeling. For instance, the Air Horn Orchestra, we try to stop it very early every time. Plenty of members here know that we try to bring it down, and people keep going because it feels really good to have a voice and to express that voice and to be that choir. So do that. Don't be afraid of that. That's a part of protest that is fine. So with Saturday chores, I mentioned the funny aspect and the serious aspect. As we were starting the Air Horn Orchestra, I saw a friend in the street who had told me about another friend of ours who was like, man, Grayson and Tina, like, why are they doing this air horn thing? They should be doing something more serious. That's just stupid. Like, they need to do something to engage people and actually create momentum. The day before, we had actually had an idea. Bruce Springsteen canceled on Friday his concert in Greensboro, and we thought that was fine. The Balls cancels, people pay attention, it made international headlines, but what else? Is there another idea? Is there another approach to this thing so that for the entire next year we don't have any concerts in North Carolina? What can we offer as a counter solution? So we had a cocktail and started talking about, wow, what can we do? Tina has a background in media production. She had just learned Squarespace, which I'm sure all of you probably know very well, better than we do. So if you want to help update our webpage, that would be cool. And I have a background in music. both through writing about it and through starting a music festival in Raleigh. So we said, well, what if we made this solution where we encourage bands not to boycott, but we turn those potential boycotts into benefits. And so we'll encourage them to come play their shows, and we'll use their shows to raise money for organizations who need it, both for progressive causes in North Carolina and to support communities made vulnerable by HB2, communities made vulnerable by 4 years of, we get 4 F-bombs, pretty fucking awful legislation. So we said, okay, well, let's do that. We started this webpage that Sunday afternoon. We sent out this webpage to hundreds of people, booking agents all across the world, whose bands come to the state. And we started the next morning, I think, to get responses. The first one came from a band called Mumford & Sons. They're a British band. You're like, why would Mumford & Sons care about politics in North Carolina? It turns out these dudes are incredibly thoughtful people, incredibly progressive, and they're really caring people. I don't know if you like their music or not. You like their music? Okay, cool. They're amazing individuals. They called us on a Monday. We had like an hour-long conversation, and they said, we're not going to cancel our show. We want to know how we can use our show for the betterment of your state, which, you know, we played in twice or 3 times or something. We just want to help. So we linked them with an organization called Equality at Sea. We linked them with Time Out Youth and the Equal Justice Initiative. They'd also been doing their own research. They wanted us to help direct that. So we went down to their show. We sat with them until midnight, had a very long conversation with them, and talked about ways they could help in North Carolina. They've since started their own nonprofit organization to fight things like this all across the world, and they're committed to coming back to North Carolina and continuing to help. The next instance really got Tina pretty excited.
Yeah, the morning that I received a Facebook message from Duran Duran was the morning that my life changed. It was just so unexpected, and like, who accepts a Facebook message? But I didn't think it was real, but it was. And we got on the phone with their manager about 30 minutes after receiving that message, and they basically said, tell us what we should do. And the thing about both of these acts is that they're not from the United States, so they were seeing this wave of cancellations. That was the thing to do in the media. And Grayson and I were really worried that, if this continues on and artistic and cultural boycotts of our state continue, if that's the thing that people are hearing about and that people are promoting and applauding, what's that gonna do for us here? Grayson grew up in the country, and he learned a lot about life and being a person and being a member of a larger community and working with people and working together through music and through the arts and through culture. And that is something that is really unique to our state, that we have pockets of, you go to the city to see the concert, and then you go home and you're part of that community, and that's just the way that people interact and ideas spread. And so to see that disappear because of this hateful legislation, to me, would only make things worse. So anyway, back to Duran Duran. They wanted to know what they could do, not canceling, to come here and help. So we gave them just like a litany of things, like, why don't you have a voter registration drive? Why don't you have somebody come up on the stage, sign a petition to repeal it on stage, donate $1 bajillion, like, do all these things. And they did, which was so cool. Like, they actually did. That's the lead singer of Duran Duran behind a giant, super gay American flag with Matt Hershey, who's the director of Equality at Sea, and they're signing a petition. He read a statement out loud on stage to an amphitheater jam-packed full of 30,000 people, asking the citizens of North Carolina to sign this petition, which they later did. Google Drive, hello. Hi, Google Drive. I think the petition collected somewhere around 10,000 signatures. They had a voter registration drive, and they donated a portion of their proceeds from this sold-out amphitheater show to progressive organizations doing on-the-ground work in North Carolina. Stand by. They were very nice about it too. They let us take a picture with them. The most recent band that we helped out is a band called the Dave Matthews Band. Similar situation. They reached out, they wanted counsel, they wanted to figure out what they could do instead of canceling. I think they ended up donating around $150,000 to organizations in the state battling HB2 that we connected them with. And our network continued to grow from this very simple, rudimentary Squarespace website. We had people like the CEO of Etsy reaching out, asking us to help him craft a statement about HB2, asking how he could help us, how he could use the support of a company like Etsy or his own support to show solidarity with the people of North Carolina. And suddenly, our message, not of boycotting, but of using your voice, using your art, using your creativity to spread the word of progressive politics, to show that North Carolina isn't just like a bunch of backwards people who hate everybody. You know, this started showing up on the front page of these publications instead of HB2, instead of canceling, instead of boycotting. It was a positive message of community engagement. That to us was really, really rewarding. So we've been doing this about 10 weeks since right before the Air Horn Orchestra. And we've been able to funnel more than $500,000 now through this effort to organizations who are doing on the ground work in North Carolina to turn back the tide of progressive politics. And back to the refrain, like, we were not doing anything different or special. There is nothing different or special about us. I had a cocktail, and maybe you had a cocktail. I certainly had a cocktail. And I said, I can do this website, no problem. We wrote a statement and we sent it to people we knew. And I mean, that was literally it. Got it?
So, you might have seen this image in the past few days. Y'all seen this image? So, a pretty amazing moment in American politics. And, you know, we can sort of stand here all day and debate whether or not this bill is perfect, but let's not do that right now. But basically what we're seeing is essentially people using the internet and actual real-life engagement in much the same way. This sort of isn't a genius idea, this whole thing I'm talking about. It's what's happening in the world, and you're seeing real people get involved in their communities and using their keyboards and using their actual, you know, their person to stand up and say, we won't change, we demand it, we're tired of this, we're tired of being mistreated. And you saw that in like the highest level of American politics with the sit-in that happened Wednesday night, right? Long week. So yeah, that's really empowering. It's great to see that this sort of model of doing both of those things is taking off, and not just sitting in front of a keyboard, not just tweeting about it as the people in prison said, but doing something. So we've started to enjoy, we found some sort of success with this. It seems that our mission, which was to get people of our ilk, of our age, into the streets and to protest and use their voice has worked. And it's been fun. The amazing thing about, you know, if you've ever been to a political protest, it's often not a lot of fun. One thing that we found with Saturday Chores and with the Air Horn Orchestra, and I guess with meeting Duran Duran, is that it's fun. People are enjoying it. They're coming out to have a sense of solidarity. And that's really been empowering to us. And we said, how can we continue that? So we are currently in the process of incorporating a nonprofit called Come Out and Show Them. If you, when you first came in, you might have heard this very noisy music. That's a piece by the composer Steve Reich. It's called Come Out. It's sort of a 1964 Harlem riots. It's an early piece of electronic music where Steve Reich sampled this testimony of a black man who was bleeding, pushing his bruises until the blood came out. He had to press the blood to come out so that the judge would see that he, in fact, had been beaten. So I'm, as of Friday, quitting my job at The Independent, and Tina and I are going to climb some mountains, 2 mountains, and then we're going to come back and start working on this nonprofit. And It's obviously a pretty important time in North Carolina. It's an important time in our country. You saw the news this morning. It's a pretty important time in our world to sort of stand up and let your voice be heard and to help other people's voices be heard. So we want to do that and show them, I guess.
This is the first time we're telling anybody any of this information.
Oh, sure.
So we're incorporating now. That is going to take a couple months. We're planning some larger activities and perhaps benefits in the fall. So if you are interested in being involved in this, we have a sign-up sheet on the registration desk back here. I printed it off of Pinterest, so it's kind of cute. You should be able to see it back there. If you want to give us your email address and learn more about how you can get involved, please either come up and talk to us. We have some Twitter handles because that's what we do, and then the email address. We're really looking forward to doing this. It's going to be exciting. So yeah, this is the great unknown. We're not totally sure where to go next with this. We just, the ship has sort of been steering us at this point, but it's gotten to the point where it's impossible to avoid. We're dealing with large enough sums of people and large enough sums of money that it's time to separate our bank accounts and get legal and get right with the state. So we're really, really excited to do this, and we would love to have any and all of you who are in this room, please join us and help us do this. So now we're going to do a little game. I gave a similar talk maybe 2 weeks ago at a leadership conference, and we did some rapid prototyping, I think is what they call it in that world. We talked about ways that you can engage and make a difference very quickly, very easily. If there's one thing you take away from this with the broken theme is it is wrong to think that you need to have large sums of money or large swaths of time to make a difference. As you saw when we were introduced, we each have like 17 jobs between us, not including this stuff. We do this as a hobby after work, couple hours, like it's not a big deal. So they did rapid prototyping, they did 3 minutes, they had public art and HP2. And what they came up with was turning this idea of public art on its head to think about graffiti. And then they were like, HP2, let's think about bathroom graffiti. What if we had a list of our legislators' phone numbers and we went in public bathrooms in North Carolina and scrawled them in there and said, for a good time call. And I thought that was amazing. And they came up with that in about 3 minutes. So we're gonna do a similar activity now. You all have name tags, so you've already got a head start on what you want to change. We're wondering if we can get 1 or 2 volunteers who would like to brainstorm about what's on their name tag that they'd like to change.
Anybody want to talk about politics up here? It'll be really fun. One more volunteer.
Thank you.
All right. Look,
Hey, Michelle.
you have to be Drew Carey, right? He's the Price is Right person?
Fuck!
Oh, yeah, no, go.
No.
Okay.
All right, good.
All right, so you'd like to start with changing food. Okay, tell me what you mean by that.
So I've been doing a lot of reading lately about, for my own self too, how I can get involved and how I can make a change. In my family, food was always a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Irish Italian. Mm-hmm. So I also have a 9-year-old daughter that's in the public school system.
I'll cry too.
Okay.
Sure.
And I also have a sister who is a school teacher at my old school. I'm also from the country.
Sure.
And she feeds her students,
Mm-hmm.
so that she can teach them.
Okay.
And my daughter goes to Underwood Elementary, which is a very terrific school in a very affluent neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And those teachers feed their students too before they can teach them. So for me, it is, how do we feed everybody that's hungry?
Sure.
Right? So I don't know how to do that.
Sure.
But I think that will make a difference in the world. And how do I do that?
So do you think that the problem is that we're not funding the right areas in order to be able to feed these children? Is that sort of what you think?
I think it goes deeper than that, right? I think it has to do with what their lives are like at home.
Mm-hmm.
Syngenta, come up here, please.
Yeah.
So I just met him today. I just
Okay.
met him this morning. And he works for Syngenta. And tell them what Syngenta
Grayson.
is. Yeah.
So I work for Syngenta. We're a biotechnology firm where our mission is to feed the world's growing population. And Michelle and I had a conversation this morning and said, what could I do to learn about Syngenta, where, you know, it's a company that we have activists against us because we practice GMO and all of that. But, you know, it's important to understand and learn and educate yourselves because we're really not the bad guys. And what Michelle had mentioned, you know, our company, we're trying to help that. North Carolina has one of the highest statistics in terms of children going without food. In Greensboro, North Carolina, there's, you know, the most food insecure place in all of the United States, and that's just awful.
So you asked me what I think I can do.
Yeah.
What I'm best at is facilitating relationships.
I see that.
Yeah.
Y'all just
That's
met,
amazing.
right? This is how it happens.
That's what I do. Is me myself, I don't consider myself to be a creative person, but I do like to seek out and hear other people's stories.
Sure.
So that's how I can start conversations, right? And then not pass it off necessarily, but go, okay, well, we started this conversation. How do I continue that? How do I connect it with what I think is important, which is food?
Awesome.
So one thing that I think about when I hear what you're saying is, you know, these are real people. These are real kids. These are people's lives, and they're struggling. And something that crosses my mind as an idea to sort of maybe to express what you're feeling, and something that you could share that could generate interest and generate awareness. Is I almost think about the children that are being fed at this school. There's some really amazing photographers in here, and some of them might be interested in something like this. But what if you did a photo project of those children, and what if they were standing in front of the school? Like, this is how many kids in this school aren't nourished properly. Something that, so you could really see the fact that these are real people who need help.
So the problem with that is
Yes.
it creates a stigma on those children.
Sure.
Right. So rather than identifying them as in need, it is more a focus on, and I don't know how to do this, so I don't have all the answers, is how much food we waste. I go to a thrift store that is on Wake Forest Road, next to the Aldi on Wake Forest Road. They have the bakeries and grocery stores like Fresh Market come and deliver their day-old bakery food, and they put it on a table out in front of at their checkout, and they encourage customers to take some of that food, you know, if they come in and buy something or thing, but also anybody that comes in the door.
Sure.
Right? So rather than identifying have-nots, we need to do a better job of identifying the haves and how those people can get connected.
Cool.
Awesome.
That's amazing. Yeah, let's stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that is basically what we do. That's how it happens. If anybody wants to get involved in that, I think identifying places where there is excess and figuring out a way to make that information publicly accessible. I'm sure there are organizations already doing that, but it's clearly not accessible enough that we all know how to make a difference with that immediately. So that's awesome. Here is how you can get in contact with us if you would like to follow along with what we've got going on, which we can't really articulate right now because it's all a big mystery. But we're very excited about it, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more from us soon. So I think we have like a couple minutes for questions. We try to go fast, I'm sorry. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, I think that's a great question. The first thing is, as we've done these 3 different pieces of activism now, it's come up before and it continues to come up, and most recently with North Carolina Needs You, it's come up routinely that folks not only want to give to existing nonprofits, but they're asking how can they give to us to continue doing this facilitation work. So when you have 10 or 15 people asking how can I donate directly to you in addition to this cause, it begins to begins to show you that there is an interest there, and maybe we're filling a gap that currently is not being filled. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we want to do big work. We want to do great work. We want to take in large sums of money. We want to make change. And it's difficult to do that when you're not legally recognized as an entity. Right now it's me and Grayson with a cocktail at the bar. That sounds like Clue. You know, so if you know us, if you're part of this direct community, I think that's fine, because you can get to know us, you can get to know what we're doing, you can be involved in our movements, and you know that like we're pretty chill people who like are cool and gonna take your money and do something awesome with it. But if you don't know us and we're just two people with a bank account and some air horns, you might not want to make a donation to what we're doing. So I think it's about legitimacy and just being able to continue what we're doing on a larger scale.
And one sort of clarification in sort of what the nonprofit will aim to do. Yesterday we were writing, so one thing that a nonprofit can do is take in large sums of money and then give it to other nonprofits. And that's going to be a core part of what we do. We were writing our articles of incorporation yesterday, and one of the main tenets is bringing in large sums of money, and that's through connections or through energy or through having benefits with bands that we've made, that we have relationships with, and then funneling that in a sort of non-tax way to other nonprofits who know, like Equality C or HRC or a ton of organizations that we work with, who know the on-the-ground fight better than we can, but we can identify those organizations and say, you need help, we can get you the help, and we're going to give you this money. So that's part of it too, is funneling that, funneling those funds.
We also want to teach other energetic young people, or not young people, other energetic, concerned people, how to do what we do and make that a core part of the mission, because everybody can make a difference easily, quickly, with massive impact if they know how to do it. Yes. Oh dear. Well, I think the first thing you've already done, which is identify something that matters to you. I just touched my loft mic, sorry Ryan. You have that on your chest right now, so begin with that. I think the second thing is find people who are smarter than you, who are already working in those fields, and ask them how you can help. And the third thing is what we try to reiterate over and over again, which is you don't need to learn something new. This idea that you have to be a professional is broke, and Creative Mornings theme word. You just have to be yourself, be creative. Like, don't be afraid that, oh, this idea is stupid, it's never gonna work. Like, try something. If you get a little nugget of an idea, before the air horns were all over the news, that was a dumb sounding idea. I mean, it's still kind of a dumb sounding idea, but it's dumb enough that it's fun and people gravitate toward it. So don't be afraid, just do it. Nike didn't pay me.
Yeah, and one other thing that I think is key there is Tina mentioned find people that are smarter than you, and listen. Like when you have that idea, you'll start interacting with communities who this is their Saturday chores. A huge concern was we're going to bother this clinic, like we're going to get in their way of their job. And one thing, so we reached out to them and we said, are we helping? If we do this, are we helping you or are we hurting you? And they were like, please don't ever stop. Right now, the clinic that we did Saturday chores at is involved in this crazy zoning mess, and they want us to show up and testify at city council meetings about the opposition. They won't help. People won't help with their causes. So just identify something that bothers you, find those people, and listen to what they need, and say, here's a zany idea that might just work. Brainstorm. I think that's like the number one thing. This is all sort of spitballing ideas, and Tina will just say, no, that's really stupid. We shouldn't do that. And sometimes she'll say, amazing idea. Okay. So next question, like maybe one or two more if we have time. That's absolutely right. Do things. Don't just tweet them. Is that right?
You don't need permission. You don't have to ask permission to make a difference. Just go out there and do something.
Can we do one more question, Jen? One more? The ideas that we're doing now, I think both North Carolina Needs You and Airborne Orchestra are part of that push. And as sort of summer winds down and we get into the election season, I hope that they grow. And we also are working on hopefully a large-scale benefit that we'll use some of that money for November itself. As for like the actual election, a sort of stunt or creative idea for that, we're not there yet. We're trying to figure that out. That's a great question.
If I can just give a plug to Jed, who's over here in the corner. He gave an amazing Creative Morning Talks last month. Some of you were probably there, but he has an incredible idea for activating this young population in our city who often makes a lot of noise about things but doesn't show up when it's time to vote. So Jed has an amazing campaign idea for Vote Raleigh that is scalable but begins right here in our community that he just hasn't had the infrastructure to execute yet, but I believe hopefully we can all work together. I want to work with him on it. I think if you're interested, talk to Jed, because there are people in this room right here. If that's, like I said, it's about networking, it's about talking to people. If that's something you're interested in, there are people here in this room right now who are working on that issue who we're going to work together on as well. So just talk to each other. That's it. Thank you.